Hi everyone, this is 102 Meters podcast. I am Martin and
This is Shuki.
And we will be talking about Robert Rauschenberg today. He is widely considered a very important artist for pop art and also the history of 20th century art in general. However, it's sometimes hard to really put a finger on what he's all about. And Shuchi will start off.
Yes, I'll start off with a very, very, very short introduction to his biography. So, Rauschenberg was born in 1925 in Port Arthur, Texas. And throughout his earlier years, he did various things, such as going to the army and learning biology, but ending up quitting because he was scared of dissecting a frog. Quite a sensitive child in the end. And then in 1947, he ended up joining art school, becoming an art student. And in 1948, in the summer, he thought of going to Paris, because at the time he still believed that Paris was really the center of art world, and if you want to do avant-garde art and if you want to do modern art, you have to go to Paris. So he went in the summer, and after arriving in Paris, he realized, actually, Paris is not really the center of art world anymore. Everyone is not in Paris, everyone is in New York. So after spending a short couple of months in Paris, he returned to the US in the autumn, and ending up joining the Black Mountain College, where he met his teacher, Joseph Albers, who he really loved as a teacher and really wanted to learn the sort of discipline that he wanted to know about it for being a rigorous artist. And after the Black Mountain College, he started living in New York. There he met with all of his contemporaries, most importantly Jasper Johns, who he started a very intimate relationship with, shared a studio with him and discussed all about their works and thinkings. And they are largely considered the sort of pre-pop art, pop-up artist whose works were really the inspiration to all of the later pop-art artists in the 60s. And at that time, some of his most famous early works was the Combines.
The Combines. What are these?
So in the 50s, when Rauschenberg and Jasper Johns were developing their ideas about what a new type of art would be after the abstract expressionists, they kind of thought of themselves also as the neo-Dadaist. And the similarity between them and the Dadaists in the 20s was that they both used found objects. They would incorporate things like bed sheets in the case of Rauschenberg, and like chairs and those goats models and all of these tires and these found objects in his work. But the difference between the neo-Dadaist and later pop artists and the Dadaists of the 20th century like Marcel Duchamp is that Duchamp thought of the philosophy of his work was that nothing is art. He wanted to break down everything, break down the whole tradition of what art is. And whereas Rauschenberg, his ethos was really that everything can be art and everything is art.
Is there such a difference then? Because in a way, it ends up turning it just a question of labels, whether you say everything is art or nothing is art. But both ultimately turn out to really be the same, and that the effect is that you do away with a separation between ordinary life and what an artist does, whether we say what an artist is doing is art or whether what an artist is doing is non-art.
Yeah, in a sense, but I think there is a fundamental difference in the way they've approached things. I think Duchamp's thinking is very deconstructive and it's to break down the whole tradition of art, but what Rauschenberg was trying to do was to rebuild from that is to think what art could be, and is in a more positive approach to it.
Yeah, I
think.
get that.
Yeah.
It's perhaps less. I mean, often I think with Dada there's often to a certain extent a playful but also cynical outlook
Yeah, of
to
course.
it.
It's completely nihilistic. It's like everything is shit.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
No,
but
that
yeah,
far.
yeah,
But you know
yeah.
what I mean? It's the attitude of it.
Sure.
But whereas Rauschenberg is like a jolly, American guy who's very positive. Well, there's one interesting quote actually. This will come around later, but I think it's a good point to mention it right now. So one of the main pusher of Rauschenberg and who's featured really importantly in his career was Alan Solomon, who curated Rauschenberg's exhibition, the Venice Biennale exhibition with the American Pavilion in 1964, where Rauschenberg eventually won the Golden Lion. And he's also curated a retrospective for Rauschenberg in a Jewish museum in the year before the Biennale, and he's made this comment about Rauschenberg, that he has no interest in social comment or satire or in politics. He uses his previously inappropriate materials not out of a desire to shock, but out of sheer delight. Out of an optimistic belief that richness and heightened meaning can be found anywhere in the world, even in refuse found in the street. So I think at the time it's a really different mood from how Duchamp was working in the 20s.
Sure.
Yes.
I guess I would also think of artists such as Peter Blake, who I don't know his oeuvre well enough, but there's also, to me, often, like there recently was a show, I guess, with more quite recent works by him at Waddington Galleries, but there's more like a playful delight in working with found objects, and perhaps that's really the pop ethos which distinguishes it from the Dadaists.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I think there is this post-war optimism, and everything is going to be great. So apart from the combines from the 50s, Rauschenberg continued to really reinvent what painting can be. And apart from using collage and collage drawings, and then he was also the first person to use silkscreen printing in his art. In art.
Before Warhol then? Because, when you think of Warhol, his works from the 1960s, I don't know, the Marilyn Monroe or whatnot.
Yeah. So Rauschenberg was actually the first one to use silkscreen printing, and then Warhol saw his work, was inspired by that idea, that he started using silkscreen. Yes, so it's very close in time, but slightly earlier. Rauschenberg was also very engaged in the realm of stage performances and dance performances. One of his most important engagements is with the Merce Cunningham Dance Company, where he worked with great artists like John Cage, and he was in charge of the stage and set designs and costume designs and especially lighting designs actually. And that was mostly in the 60s, where he would tour with the dance company around the world, going to places even like Thailand, Japan, and by the late 1960s, however, he has had arguments with John Cage and Merce Cunningham, so they no longer work together ever since. But Rauschenberg continued to work very heavily with performances and dances, and making his own shows and theaters throughout the next few decades. And he eventually passed away in 2008. So lived a long life, but continued to produce a lot of work, very productive.
Yeah, curious. Yeah, interesting. I mean, I think what's really essential to his oeuvre is, as we've already discussed, integrating the everyday into art, and so being a proto pop artist in a way, and marking a movement beyond the abstract expressionism that he would have been first exposed to in 1950s New York. One thing I was quite interested in, perhaps one of his most famous works or series of works, was the works exhibited at the Venice Biennale in 1964. I believe he showed 8 paintings.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And they all featured John F. Kennedy, and they were images taken, so silk screens taken of John F. Kennedy when he was still a senator, campaigning for the presidency, and they were he created the silk screen prior to Kennedy's assassination, but the works were only presented at the Venice Biennale after his assassination. So, well timed in some sense. But what I'm quite curious about with Rauschenberg is, how these works. Well, one question is, how do people today relate to his works? Because frankly, in 1964. The paintings from that series shown at the Venice Biennale, they perhaps capture the state of America in the mid-1960s better than any other artwork.
Yeah.
But we've moved on since then, and so I wonder what will... I mean, I thought, there was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump yesterday. Would Rauschenberg, if he were around today, would he use such imagery? I think many of the images we've seen in the news were, really, I mean, in some sense, a lot stronger than what, they go beyond a terrific painter's imagination. They were just really, really gripping images, with blood in his face and the American flag. But anyway.
Yes, you're here referring to the Trump images, right?
Yeah.
Taken. Yeah, so we're actually recording this on the 14th of July. So we just looked at the news yesterday when it was happening in the US. I mean, when I saw the images that's being taken, I just thought that if we had a Warhol or Rauschenberg right now in the art world, we'd definitely see some amazing paintings coming out in the next Miami Beach.
Right.
Yeah. But it's I think it's a very good question. How is Rauschenberg still relevant today? Because all of his art is essentially about what's happening around him, what he saw, what he's experienced at that time, at that point in America. Well, also the rest of the world, but really from the American's perspective. And I think there's a sense that if I didn't know what Kennedy meant to the Americans, if I didn't know what the moon launch meant for the Americans, do I really still relate to his works? Especially for a foreign market, like for Chinese people or for Japanese people, maybe a bit more because they love America.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to relate if you don't know that part of history, like what the Cold War was like, what that sense of optimism that Kennedy brought. What does that mean to them?
Yeah, I mean, I really agree. I mean, I would also think, just purely looking at the market of Andy Warhol, there are certain series that in the last 20 years have lost in value. I would be inclined to say just because the imagery is perhaps too restricted to an American context. I mean, I don't know, like Elvis Presley paintings, you don't see them coming up at all.
Elvis Presley is.
But I'd be inclined to say that what's working very well right now. There was a very appealing painting in May at the auction in New York is the flower paintings, because they have a very immediate allure, and they're more separated to a kind of 1950s, 1960s pop iconography that you may find in Marilyn Monroe, Elvis Presley, or other celebrities. You will have depicted that I myself, as a fairly young fellow, wouldn't know sufficiently of.
Yeah, maybe I don't really know who Elizabeth Taylor is, to be honest.
For instance, yeah. So does that mean that his work is less relevant now, or what's your take? Or does that mean that would you expect people that he will become more oblivious to younger generations, or what's your take on that?
I feel that to a certain extent there is, because I've encountered people who they know Rauschenberg and be like, okay, yeah, he's a great artist, but it's like they will never get what Rauschenberg is about, kind of. It just doesn't speak to them, these imageries.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm also thinking, do you have to know what the images are about to appreciate it?
Yeah.
Because unlike Warhol, which is really about the image, right? Reading about which subject matter he's doing. But I think Rauschenberg, there's a lot of differentiation in terms of composition, and there is also painterliness to it. There is this the way he's done it is in a way like a free association of images, and how you would sort of, not just compositionally, but like in terms of the images, how one relates to another.
I think it's also in and of itself, he's a very innovative artist who experimented with a lot of processes, combining performance. His also his famous artworks like the erased de Kooning drawing, where famously in 1953, I believe, when de Kooning was already a very well-respected artist and a successful one, he went to de Kooning's studio, asked for a drawing as he wanted to erase it.
Yeah.
And de Kooning obliged and gave young Rauschenberg a drawing he had been working on for some time, and allowed.
And it was also like drawn with like oil pastel, something like really difficult kind of things to rub off.
Right. Yeah. And I think there's a certain kind of experimentation, also the silk screen technique, printing on metal in the 1980s, I believe, that certainly makes him an important artist, but perhaps that also feeds into why many people don't know of him that well. I think there's a flip side to experimentation, in that it also makes it harder for people to summarize your work in one sentence, or it makes it less catchy.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's our take then in concluding? Do we think that he will lose in significance?
I don't know. I don't know. I think there is another aspect of him that might be more relevant to us today. I think the aspect of him that could be interesting right now is how international of a person he was, and how international of an artist he was. So when I mentioned about the 1964 Venice Biennale, so Rauschenberg was actually there at the Biennale when he was awarded the Golden Lion, and the reason he was there was not only because he won the Golden Lion, but he was actually also there for the Merce Cunningham's dance company's tour. And in 1964, he had a tour that went all the way from like France, Venice, like Italy, and then Sweden, Finland, Poland, Austria, Netherlands, and then went to Thailand and Japan, and like a lot of places. So in the 1980s, he also went on this big world tour that he organized himself, which he called ROCI, ROCI, which stands for Rauschenberg Overseas Cultural Interchange. And on that trip, he really went to like Venezuela and Mexico and Soviet Union and like East Germany, West Germany, and China, Tibet. Yeah. Well, China, Tibet, Beijing and Tibet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think maybe Japan again, or Thailand, India, and all of these places. It's quite amazing why he wanted to do that. He was really funding himself to do all of this, and he would like nearly went bankrupt or anything. He had to like sell his own collections to fund this whole trip. Like he would go to one place and take pictures and work with some local like craftsmanship or something and learn from them and make a group of work, and then he would bring those group of work to the next country to also exhibit there. So he was really trying to facilitate some sort of cultural exchange within like around the world just by himself.
Yeah.
And he really actually believed that art could really change the world, and art could affect politics, and art could change something.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. And so in a way that allowed him to also have a very global outreach, perhaps more so. I mean, it's in a way already an idea that goes back to the early 20th century. I mean, you said that he was taught by Josef Albers. I mean, an idea of the Bauhaus has always been to integrate art and design. And there's also a social aspect to it, the idea that in some sense art can improve the lives of people. And I think with Albers, he's a highly calculating artist, but there's also something very moving about his artworks. How, he's yet very rigid and calculated, but there's also a very soft human part in how the colors affect us when we look at them. Something therapeutic, I would be inclined to say. Interesting. I mean, I'm also thinking you just mentioned how he would travel the world. But, one might somewhat justifiably ask whether he was really so special in that regard, in that, at least the story goes, that many of the abstract expressionist artists, such as Jackson Pollock, were also heavily toured around the world, particularly Europe, to showcase the kind of freedom that artists had in America, that they could paint monochromatic paintings at a large scale without subject matter, and it was funded by the CIA, as far as I understand, as a form of propaganda. So is Rauschenberg really that special in an international outlook, and perhaps also a distinctly American outlook of spreading American art throughout the world?
Well, I think the difference is that, from my knowledge, I think Jackson Pollock and all of the Abex people, they didn't show up themselves in those places, right? It was kind of a group exhibition of Abex paintings, like in the Tate or something, like big exhibitions. But what's interesting about Rauschenberg is that he went there himself. And there's quite a lot of articles that's like the publishing that would say Rauschenberg, this American artist, is here, and he would do like interviews with people, and he would do performances. Like in Japan, he did this, I think it's called 20 questions to Robert Rauschenberg, and he would have these interviewers ask him questions, and instead of answering them, he just made a huge installation painting on stage live. I think it's like all of these things that he did when he was there in the country, that he's really made a presence and made an impression on people. Yeah, I think that is probably the difference between the generation earlier, where it was sort of government funded and all of these big exhibitions, and the 60s. The 60s, I feel the pop culture of America that really made an impression on people.
I think that the context is also perhaps a different one, in that I think with the abstract expressionist painters, perhaps the narrative also goes, prior to them, America was a cultural wasteland, one might think.
Yeah.
Certainly compared to the bustling Paris of before the Second World War. And so perhaps in the 1950s, there was pressure to make a point that America is a land of opportunities, and it was very centrally funded.
Yeah.
And then with Rauschenberg, it just took a far more free, exploratory form. I mean, firstly, it's far more individualistic because it's his own project, but I think maybe it also has a greater sense of confidence. I mean, there's something, there's typically something quite pathetic about a very bravado appearance. I mean, like typically the stereotype of someone who, has feelings of insecurity is to, paint a large painting, you might think.
Sure. But yeah, I think
I think there's a far more like a play and love and experimentation that comes from a far deeper sense of confidence.
Yeah. I think the Abex painters, they were the ones who made the statement that America can do art.
I mean, I often feel they're hugely overrated. I mean, but anyway.
Anyway. Yes. The new generation of the pop artists and Rauschenberg, they were enabled by the Abex painters that it's already proven that America can come up with a new idea. So now they can do whatever experiments they want. And like in 1964 with the Venice Biennale, so Rauschenberg was also one of the first. He's not the first, but one of the most important painting prizes won by an American artist. So the Golden Lion painting was won by him that year. And there was a huge controversy about it. So people before him, apart from one instance in 1958 with an Abex painter who kind of won the painting prize as well. Mark Tobey, yes.
He wouldn't be an Abex, really. He was certainly not part of the New York school. I mean, he was in Washington, and actually had a distinctive style that was inspired by Chinese calligraphy.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yes. So apart from him, so the last American painter who's won something in Venice was Whistler.
And he was very European
who's British, basically. Who's not really American. And so Rauschenberg's win was a huge deal for America. They really wanted to push it to happen. And so before that, it was actually the earlier couple of years, it was mostly Paris painters like Hartung and Raoul Duffy, what's his name?
Oh, Duffy,
Duffy, yeah. So in 1964, it was actually the year when the American Pavilion that year was also funded by the government instead of privately by MoMA, so which was the case beforehand. And it was a huge deal to push him to get the prize. And there was a controversy that afterwards saying that, the American government really rigged the prize and got Rauschenberg to win by don't know how, seducing the judges, or like I don't know how, but
money talks,
or like the art dealers are in the game to make this happen.
Right.
Yes, there's also articles written afterwards saying that the title was The Merchants of Venice. No, The Merchandise of Venice.
Ah, that's good.
It was insinuating like the juries were manipulated by art dealers and suggesting that because of this whole commercialization of Venice Biennale, that the Biennale was assemblages of what's new rather than what's the best.
Interesting.
Yes. So, yeah, I mean, looking back right now, it's since we've just been to the Biennale as well this year, it's kind of interesting how much they cared about commercialization of art at that point.
Yeah, I mean, now it just seems to be
It's like the
part
norm.
of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, would have been curious. Would have been curious to have been there back then.
Yes, with the big paintings shipped by those tiny boats in the canals. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Great.
So, do you have a favorite painting of Rauschenberg?
Gosh, I don't think I think I'm too much out of my depths. I mean, I probably like the combines. I think they're really striking works when he would, I don't know, have like a goat's head on a painting, like a physical object. I think they're quite. I feel quite drawn to them. I wouldn't say I'm sufficiently. I wouldn't say I've ever been too close to his work in general, I must admit, but that's probably what I'd be most drawn to.
Yeah. I guess the combines, they have this sense that things are coming out of the painting, literally. Yeah. And
I mean, I often feel the silk screens, I mean, particularly also the ones on metal that you, for instance, have on view at Thaddeus Ropac right now, they often just seem rather flat.
Yeah.
I mean, I just engage with them less as objects, personally.
Yeah, I think the later works, they're quite variation of quality.
Yeah.
He just made a lot of things, and like his biographer also agrees that with Rauschenberg's late works, it's just kind of like sometimes good, sometimes great, sometimes.
Yeah. Yourself?
I actually, by going through his works and his biography, I was actually quite drawn to a series of drawings that he's made in the 1950s, the 59, 60 sort of.
Okay.
So this drawing is quite interesting. So he's taken the subject of Dante, the Dante's Inferno.
Right.
And he would use sort of ready-made, magazine images and newspaper images and transfer them using the special technique he's got to papers, and then also paint on them.
Okay.
So it's kind of, if you can see here,
yeah,
it's kind of collage-y, but also very painterly. So he would also use pencil to sort of create shadings throughout the pages.
What's the series made for? Like a publication, for instance?
No, it's actually quite interesting. So the 50s, he's made all of these combines and all of these things, but actually he wasn't really appreciated as an artist. People didn't take him that seriously still at that point. People still think he's like the junk art of junk American art, like, because he uses junk in his art, right? And so in 59, 60, he just suddenly came to feel like, okay, I need to be taken seriously as an artist, and how am I going to do that? I'm going to take a serious subject matter. So, like Dante, and
right.
And he just decided to create a set of drawings based on that. And I think the works are visually very interesting. It's a lot of erasing and a lot of mark making, as well as using these transferred images and with contemporary American images, but to create a story that's about that's sort of inferred from Dante's Inferno.
Yeah. So at the time he was dating Cy Twombly. I mean, from what you say,
I think. So it's also this Rome-related theme that he's been inspired to, and so I think he got this. He was trying to get it donated to the MoMA or something, like try to get it into. Oh, he was trying to get a grant from MoMA or something to do this, and then at the end he would have this work in the museum or something like that. But it eventually worked out. There was some up and downs, but eventually worked out. It's the whole set is now in MoMA, and I thought this is also a very interesting set of works to look at if you have some time.
Great.
Thank you. And also, there's a new documentary that just came out on Rauschenberg's Venice Biennale of 1964.
What's it called?
It's called Taking Venice.
Good.
Yes. Taking Venice.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. Okay, bye-bye.